Greetings and welcome to Hexed Encountered. I'm Joe. In this video, we will be doing a first look at the game Sixth Fleet Deluxe Edition, designed by Joseph Miranda and published by Decision Games. Now, if we flip the box over, we get some information on it. This is its system is based on the game Red Dragon Rising, and that one we have a deluxe edition of that I already did a first look for on the game. It is Red Dragon Green Crescent, and they, as it says here, they use the same system. This one is originally was published in Modern War number 41, but this one has new map and counter artwork, a mounted game board, updated rules, new player aid cards, and a campaign analysis article. The game provides players with a wide variety of forces and decision making. So this is a hypothetical NATO versus Soviet struggle for the Mediterranean during the last couple decades of the Cold War. So there is a 1970s scenario and also a 1980s scenario, with the latter introducing improved ships and aircraft. Victories based on controlling vital areas and inflicting losses. So let's open it up and take a look at what's inside the box. All right, as expected, well, maybe not as expected, we got one baggie. Oh, I'm sorry, two baggies. I don't know how many counters are in here. And then we also have one D6, standard white. And we have our instruction book, which runs, 31 pages. There's also an article in here, of course. So the actual game runs about 19 pages, apparently. Not too bad. Now, I guess we got a little dinged in transit. There's a little crease there, and it also got the rule book a little bit, it looks like. But yeah, the box was packed pretty tight. There were 4 games in there, as you probably saw if you watched the new arrival video for April, and they were packed in there pretty tight. So what do you expect? I think it was FedEx. They must have dropped it. Player aid card, one counter sheet, I guess. So 2 bags makes sense in that regard. Let me take a look here. You can see some of the ships. We've got U.S. ships here in blue, Greece in light blue, green for Italy. Spain is yellow or gold colored. Tan for Turkey. A lighter blue, kind of mid-range blue, I guess, for France. Here's the UK. I guess generic NATO task forces here. And these are all Americans. And then over here, of course, you've got the Soviet Navy and Air Forces. And then you have some neutral aircraft stuff too, as well, at the bottom. And I guess the dark blue here is just kind of generic NATO. We do have a NATO symbol there. And then, of course, backside of all of the counters, as you can see. So that is the counter sheet. Let's take a quick look at the player aid cards here. So you've got your NATO random events, Soviet random events, victory points for both sides, sudden death victory conditions. Then over here we've got setup information for the Soviets. Inside, actions, I guess. Where's the well, I haven't looked at the rule book yet, so I don't know where NATO setup would be, but you've got your various actions in here: personnel actions, intelligence actions, ops actions, naval actions, and air actions. Then over here you've got ground actions, combined actions, logistics, refit, and strike actions. And on the back, terrain effects chart, variable scenario deployment, neutral entry for Egypt, Israel, Libya, Syria, Tunisia, and Yugoslavia, and then stacking. It's 2 identical for that. And I'll look at the map first. It's 2 maps, both mounted. It's 1 map, obviously, but it's in 2 pieces. And then we'll look at the rules. So I'm kind of doing this in the reverse order of how I typically do it. Mix it up a little bit because I am a wild and crazy guy. Not really, but actually this is just one. It looks like I must have my games mixed up. And this is also upside down, so allow me to spin it. All right, I think I'm going to have to reset my shot a little bit because this is a fairly large one. Okay, here is our map. Now, obviously, it's set up for 2 players. We got the Soviet side up here and the NATO side at the bottom, or at this side, I guess you could say. Generally speaking, I would say most of the boxes are oriented to in kind of this direction, it seems to me anyway. The Soviet specific stuff, of course, is along what I would call the northern end of the map. You can see we got the Mediterranean here and the, well, I guess it's more of the like Eastern Mediterranean, but you get the idea. Well, it's most of the Mediterranean. The area by Spain is obviously cut out, but you got France and Italy. You see some unplayable areas here, I guess, where you can't, use troops and stuff. I know from Red Dragon, Green Crescent, the game's focus is really on naval and air. I mean, the name is Sixth Fleet, not Med War or something where you would expect to have ground forces be an important part. So there are ground operations, but that's not the focus of the game. So you can see we've got all the players in their areas, various areas for the larger countries like Italy and Turkey. You have some of the neutral powers that start neutral at least: Syria, Israel, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, and then of course France, Italy, and Yugoslavia. And you could tell they're neutral by the colors, right? They are gray. The NATO countries are blue, and the Soviets are red. So you have the Black Sea and the Med, the Aegean, the Adriatic, etc. All the islands and so on as well. Then you've got bases, NATO action box, Soviet action box, NATO elimination box here. Soviet elimination is here. Then we've got strikes available for both sides. Boom, boom. Refits. Then you have your task forces and your amphibious groups and so on. Amphibious groups for NATO are here. The Soviets here. NATO has 3 of them. 1 for NATO generally, and 2 that are more US specific. Soviets have 2. Soviets have 2 carriers. US has 4. Then you also have French, Italian, and Spanish carriers, and then 3 generic task forces. They also have 3 task forces. And your battle display is here. So you get the idea. This is what the map looks like. And now we can take a look at the rules. Okay, so here is our rule book. You can see the table of contents with all the case numbers. And as I said, it runs through page 19. And then on page 20, we get the historical article and credits and components on the back cover. Okay, so you got your intro, which is basically matching what you saw on the back of the box. Then we've got our component list and an explanation of the map that we just saw a moment ago. This might be interesting, however. Our base layout here for the bases, you can see they have an anti-ground combat factor, electronic warfare, anti-aircraft, anti-surface ship, and anti-sub, and then the base type is right here. This would be, I guess, be an air base. Yes, we have air bases and naval bases. Okay, and on the next page, you got your counters and a breakdown of the unit counters. So we can take a quick look at that as well. Here you see your ground units, your air units, your submarine units, and your surface ship units. Okay, combat unit layout. So it's the same as the base, it looks like, except they have a little bit of additional information with the movement range, the unit ID, and country abbreviation. The rest of them are the same. Here's our color thing that we saw kind of on on the box. Oh no, not the box, the player aid. Sorry. Neutral countries, your two scenarios. I guess units specific to those scenarios, and then ground unit abbreviations. The Soviets, and over here for NATO. And then your units, your naval abbreviations and types and so on, right? All the various ship types, amphibious, logistics, surface type, Soviet designations, air unit abbreviation, so you can see what kind of air units you've got. There are a lot, as you might expect, from the various NATO countries here, and then of course the Soviets as well with their NATO names next to them, like the Flogger and the Fishbed and the Fulcrum and the Flanker and all of those, and of course the famous backfire bomber. Ground unit types, you've got mechanized, marine, and airborne. Then they have apparently corps, division, and brigade size units, and some static units. And we also have strike markers, cruise missiles, special operations, and electronic warfare administrative markers. As you can see, various things you might want to mark. Control of forces, terms and definitions. All right. So then you have control of zones. Control indicates which side has domination of a land zone. And what determines that if it's under NATO control if there are only NATO ground units and or functional bases in the zone. Conversely, it'd be the same if the Soviets were the only ones there. And then you have contested, uncontested, if no one has anything there. And a neutral status for any country that has not entered belligerency. Chance of control. And you've got sea zones and rules for the Turkish Straits. How to win. You've got your two sudden death and then victory points, bases, levels of victory, sequence of play. So here's our sequence of play. You've got a Soviet random event phase, Soviet actions, the NATO random events, NATO actions, and then your turn record phase. So fairly straightforward. You roll a d6 on the random events table, and if the event is rolled that does not result in an event due to the criteria not being met, the player again rolls the die until an event occurs. So you're definitely going to have an event every turn. Then you have your action phase where you can take one or more actions. We see that right here in section 6. And then the turn record phase, move the game turn marker, and if it's the last turn, the game ends and you decide or determine who wins. Actions. An action is the term used to describe the performance of a basic game function such as movement, combat, reinforcement, recon, logistics, etc. All actions available for use in play are listed in the list of actions on the player aid cards. Players may use all actions unless stated otherwise. Some may be conducted only by one of the players. Each player records the number of actions he can take each game turn using his C2 command and control marker on his action track. Each time you take an action, you move your C2 marker down one box. That makes sense. You don't have to use all your actions, but unused actions are lost at the end of each player's action phase and reset to 0. In general, an action involves only one force of units in one zone. Units of different nationalities cannot be part of the same force when conducting an action, although they are combined when defending in combat. Okay. We have multiple actions, NATO C2 and additional actions, Naples and joint ops. Naples and Crete are NATO command and control and intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance centers. Okay, so that's why we have special rules here for Naples and Crete. The Western Med, if there are no Soviet naval or air units in the Western Med zone, NATO receives one additional action per turn. So it is in the Soviets' best interest to move somebody into the Western Med. Soviet impetus and additional actions. On game turns 1 to 4, the Soviets automatically receive 2 actions instead of 1. Additionally, if the Soviets control the Istanbul land zone And there are no NATO naval units in the Turkish Straits during any game turn. The Soviets received one additional action. So both sides are encouraged to spread out across the map from their respective ends, I guess, so to speak. You've got type of actions. G1 is personnel, G2 intelligence. This makes sense. G3 ops, G4 is logistics, G5 is strike. Then your procedure. I don't want to go into too much detail. We'll do it when we play. Basing and stacking restrictions. Movement rules for land, air, and naval. Then you have naval unit movement here, specifically naval bases. And then ground movement. Then your airborne rules, combat. Mandatory combat. Generally, opposing units can peacefully coexist indefinitely within the same land and or sea zone. Combat may occur if a player takes an action that specifically allows for it and he wishes to attack. Usually that will be as the result of moving into a sea or land zone occupied by one or more enemy units. However, combat is mandatory when conducting an amphibious action onto a small island if there are enemy units or bases in that land zone. An air assault action into a land zone, okay, containing enemy units, right? So if you land on the beach or you come in via air assault, you're going to have combat. An air action into a zone containing enemy units of any kind with an anti-air factor of 1 or more. So basically, you overfly an enemy that can shoot at you, they will do so, and you will have combat. Types of combat, attacking air units versus defending air units, naval units, and or ground units in the same zone. Attacking naval units versus defending air units and or naval units in the same zone. Bombardment attacks. Attacking naval units versus ground units in an adjacent land zone. Guided missile attacks, attacking guided missile naval units versus ground units and or bases in an adjacent land zone, and attacking ground units versus defending ground units and or air units in the same zone. Okay, then there's the procedure. We won't go through this. You've got hit numbers, a firing limit. Our sequence is you group all participating units in order of their EW values, electronic warfare. Each group on both sides will fire prior to moving to a lower numbered group. Units on both sides with the same EW rating fire simultaneously. In this case, all die rolls on both sides for those units are made, and then both sides suffer their losses. Inflict any losses for each EW group before moving to the next lower group. Player whose units are hit can choose which of his units suffer the hits, and they can have any EW rating. Unlike other games in this series, there are no protected targets. Combat restrictions. Here's our battle display, which will show you the EW numbers, right? We have 4s up here, 3s, and 2s, and then 1s. So you go down top to bottom. All kinds of rules for various types of things, bases and submarines and ground units and all that good stuff. Reinforcements and withdrawals, reinforcements, refits, carriers and carrier operations. That, of course, gets its own section. On-map bases, like southern France here in the example. Off-map bases. The NATO player always controls Gibraltar and may use it to launch attacks onto the map. The NATO player can have an unlimited number of naval, air, and land forces in Gibraltar. NATO units may move between Gibraltar and an adjacent on-map zone by paying 1 movement point, as if moving into an adjacent zone. The Soviet player cannot move units into or attack Gibraltar or use strikes against it. The Rock. Okay, then we've got Fog of War, retreating, and that's not retreating, that's neutrals. Egypt and Yugoslavia, Israel and Tunisia, Syria and Libya, and refit. And you've got additional naval units. The Soviet player can add the Kremlin-class carrier to his 1980s force. And conversely, the U.S. can add a strike cruiser to his 1980s force. And the Turkish battle cruiser starts in the Turkish Straits in either scenario. And you've got a couple of other things here for optional stuff. Fighters and rally, small forces, French resolve. And then the scenarios. So you have, I believe there are 2. Selection of scenarios, 1970s and 1980s. In the 70s, you remove all units marked 1980 on the back from the game. All other units are used. Conversely, you remove 1970s from the 80s scenario. Optional units are used by mutual player agreement. The game length starts on game turn 1 and ends on game turn 15. You can begin on beginning on game turn 10, you roll 1d6 at the end of each game turn. If the die rolls within the range listed on the game turn of the track inclusive, the game comes to an immediate and determined victory. All right, then you got some various setup info for the units, for the NATO side and the Soviet side. And then we get to the Naval Confrontation in the Cold War by Joseph Miranda, 6th Fleet. Nice article. I will probably read this, but yeah, that's cool. Pretty nice. Amphibious assault ship USS Wasp, flanked by 2 landing craft, air cushion, hovercraft in the Mediterranean. Nice. Interesting. All right. That completes our look at 6th Fleet Deluxe Edition. So for now, we are done. Thank you to my channel members. I appreciate the support. For everybody else, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I hope you got something good out of it. And we'll return down the road to check something else out. But while you're here, if you consider liking, sharing, hyping, or maybe even taking that leap and subscribing, that would all be very much appreciated by me and will help the channel grow, which is, it's not my main objective, but it is encouraging to see people enjoy the stuff that I'm doing. So if you could do any of that, like I said, I will appreciate it. But either way, hopefully you will return and see something else down the road. For now, we are done, as I said. Until next time, I'm Joe. This is Hexed Encountered. And as always, happy gaming.